Steve Rogers is coming back in Avengers Doomsday, but he's coming back to die because he might be the reason the multiverse is doomed. And yes, I'm talking about old Steve Rogers from Earth 616. According to Insider, my time to shine a low. For the multiverse to survive in Avengers Doomsday, Steve Rogers has to die. And honestly, that makes perfect sense when Steve chose to stay in the past with Peggy. That single decision may have been the spark that set off the chaos ripping through the MCU today. Because in that moment, Steve didn't just get his happy ending. He fractured the timeline and created an entirely new branch of reality. And this isn't just speculation. The Russo brothers themselves confirmed this idea is canon. So the real question is, could the Captain America we love actually be the reason the multiverse is collapsing? Get ready, because I'm about to break down how Steve Rogers may have doomed and how he could ultimately save the entire multiverse from Doctor Doom. To start understanding why Steve Rogers might be the key to saving or destroying the multiverse, we need to go back to Endgame, because that's where it all began. For years, fans have been locked in an endless debate about Steve's ending. Did Steve live out his life in the same timeline as the original Captain America, hiding in the shadows all along? Or did he branch off into an entirely different reality? The answer to this question isn't just trivia. It's the key to understanding Steve's connection to the end of the multiverse itself. The writers of Endgame, Stephen McFeely and Christopher Marcus, said yes, that Steve went back to the 1940s to live with Peggy in the main 616 timeline, staying hidden and only reappearing after all the events had already played out. But that explanation doesn't quite add up with what we've seen in the movies and series. In the Loki series, the TVA has shown us how the multiverse really works, and it becomes clear that every time someone interferes with the timeline, it creates a new branch, a whole new reality. Besides, think about it. Do you honestly believe Steve Rogers would go back in time, change his entire life by being with Peggy, and then just stand by while every major event unfolded? The Captain America we know would never sit on the sidelines while the world fell apart. Fortunately for us, the Russo brothers also weighed in on this debate, and their answer lines up much closer with what we actually saw in the movies.
Think about it. If you travel to the past, that past becomes your future, and your former present becomes the past, which can't now be changed by your new future.
Exactly.
According to them, Steve Rogers created a new branch when he chose to stay with Peggy, living in a parallel universe. After living out his entire life, he returned to the original one to give Sam the shield. This idea fits perfectly with the Ancient One's explanation of time travel to Banner in Endgame, as well as with what the TVA showed us about the multiverse. And this is the moment where everything you thought you knew about Steve Rogers' ending starts to unravel. When the TVA captured Loki, they specifically mentioned the Avengers time travel and said their mission didn't create any branches of the sacred timeline. But notice this, they never included Steve Rogers in that statement. Just like they also never included Thanos traveling into the future in Endgame. And maybe that's because those two cases actually did break the sacred timeline and were supposed to be pruned, but they weren't. And for years, this so-called loose end was the reason that sparked endless debate about Steve's ending. But the truth is there was never a loose end at all, and I am about to prove it. The TVA didn't erase the branch Steve created. Not because they shouldn't, but because, as we saw in Loki, they were already too busy trying to stop the multiverse from unraveling into spaghetti. Pruning timelines was no longer the priority. And yes, this all happened long before Steve Rogers ever took his trip to the past. The entire story of Loki Season 1 and Season 2 unfolded in what, from an outside perspective, would look like the blink of an eye. Because inside the TVA, time doesn't flow, it doesn't even exist. So when Loki was captured, right after the Battle of New York in 2012, everything that happened to him at the TVA took place in the span of a single blink for the Avengers still standing in 2012. That's why Captain America never faced consequences for the branch he created. But the real shock comes when you realize what that branch actually did to the multiverse. When the multiverse was born, time kept moving forward as always, which means Nexus events like Steve's choice weren't pruned. They developed naturally, without interference from the TVA. And that means one thing. Steve Rogers lived in a universe that wasn't his. Steve didn't just visit that reality. He lived there for 70 years. That means he basically rewrote the original timeline completely. Because without Steve being frozen for decades, most of human history, as he remembered it, would have changed. And the way this connects to the multiversal collapse happening right now, it's only logical. Because when Steve created a new branch in reality, he may have become the very first cause of an incursion in the MCU. And we know that the multiverse is collapsing because of incursions. But to fully understand how Steve started an incursion with the reality branch he created, we first need to remind ourselves how incursions actually work. As Mr. Fantastic explained it in Multiverse of Madness, an incursion happens when the barrier between two universes weakens, causing both universes to collide until they're completely destroyed. And what triggers that weakening? It starts when someone from one universe travels into another, depending on how much damage or interference they cause while they're there. That's exactly how Doctor Strange caused an incursion in Multiverse of Madness. when he used the Forbidden Darkhold in a universe that wasn't his. So it's not just possible. It's extremely likely that Steve Rogers didn't merely weaken the barrier between universes, he destabilized the entire multiverse. And the Doctor Doom we're going to see in the movie might not be just any Doom. It could be a Doom from a universe already destroyed by the incursions that Steve Rogers set in motion, with Doom as the only survivor. Now fully aware of what's happening across the multiverse, Doom could be on a mission to end this multiversal destruction and save what's left, but to rule what remains. And the first step in his plan is eliminating the root cause, killing Steve Rogers of Earth, 616. This would even explain Robert Downey Jr.'s cryptic phrase, new mask, same task. Because once again, he is playing a character that is trying to save and control everything. But this time, not just one universe, the entire multiverse. Marvel could absolutely lean into this, tying Steve directly to the very first incursion, the initial crack that set the multiverse on a path to collapse. And if that is what really happened, there's only one way to stop the multiverse from falling apart. Steve Rogers has to make the ultimate sacrifice. And Marvel has at least two ways they could stage the heroic moment. First one, they could argue that Steve is now a being that belongs to two universes at once. And while he's alive, he'll keep weakening the multiverse. That would be the perfect excuse to bring him back, give him one last truly heroic sacrifice, and close his arc properly before the MCU reboot. Think about it. Steve Rogers always puts the mission first. So, if he realizes that he himself is the reason the multiverse is collapsing, do you really think he'd hesitate to sacrifice himself? Of course not. And the second way Marvel could stage a sacrifice is by having Steve stay behind, giving his life so that others can survive, so that the survivors can carry on the fight to protect the multiverse from doom. Looking at everything that's happened in the MCU since Endgame, along with what we know about the looming Doomsday, it all points to Marvel adapting the Times Out arc, where Steve is older. This storyline sets the stage for the universe-altering event of the 2015 Secret Wars, the very saga Marvel seems to be building toward with Avengers Secret Wars. Swap Doctor Doom into Tony's role from the comics, and the pieces practically write themselves. So, if you know that storyline, you know it fits perfectly. During the multiversal collapse, some heroes and villains survive by escaping to the multiversal arcs, carrying with them the memories of what happened before Doom created Battleworld. Now imagine Steve Rogers standing among the survivors, leading the last resistance against Doom. And the way he makes his final stand is by sacrificing himself so that others can survive. Picture the heroes rushing into the multiversal arcs, but someone has to stay behind to hold the line and ensure they escape. That someone is Steve. He chooses to stay. He chooses to give his life, not just for one world, but for the entire multiverse. And interestingly, this could even tie back to something Steve actually said to Tony during their argument in the Avengers of 2012.
You're not the guy to make the sacrifice play. To lay down on a wire and let the other guy crawl over you.
I think I would just cut the wire.
That would give Steve the perfect ending, a send-off on the same level as Tony Stark in Endgame. Maybe even bigger. Marvel didn't bring back an old Steve Rogers at the end of Endgame for no reason. Do you honestly think they aged him up and left his fate a mystery just for the sake of it? No, they did that because they're saving him for something bigger. They never revealed where he went. Nobody's seen him since, and I don't think that's random. I think Marvel is keeping him in the shadows, because when the time is right, Steve Rogers will return as one of the central players in the next big saga. In fact, he might actually already know it, and have been working behind the scenes to try to stop the incursions. Steve may even have passed the shield to Sam, not just as a symbolic gesture, but because he knew what he had done and what was coming. He wanted Sam to keep the Avengers together, to give them a fighting chance, to keep their universe alive. And that's exactly what Sam Wilson is doing right now. And if I'm right, this could finally settle the debate and show fans what really happened to Steve, answering the big questions like how he actually returned the Infinity Stones, and how he made it back to the 616 universe, while also connecting the Infinity Saga to the Multiversal Saga, giving Doomsday the weight and payoff of a true sequel. By the way, if you are a true Captain America fan and want to support the channel, I got something special for you, a Captain America short sleeve t-shirt. And trust me, this isn't just another Marvel tee. This design is a retro throwback to the classic 80s look, which makes it feel like you're carrying a piece of Cap's history with you. It's bold, it's timeless, and it's the kind of shirt that gets noticed by fellow Marvel fans. The kind of thing where someone sees it and instantly knows, yep, this person's a real one. I left my affiliate link below. If you grab one through it, I'll earn a small commission at no extra cost to you. So you're not just picking up a shirt, you're picking up a collectible piece of Marvel legacy while also helping support the channel. Honestly, it's a win-win. Thank you in advance for your support. Now tell me, do you agree with this theory? Or do you think something completely different is going to happen? Let me know your theory in the comments.